Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. So beautiful to see you again. Day 3, Wisdom in Times of Crisis. Oh, so beautiful.
And this morning, I would like to introduce our host for this session, Vera de Chalambert. And Vera is a writer and a scholar of contemplative religion. And Vera has been with Sand for over 10 years. And Vera has been kind of the truth teller of the community. She came 10 years ago to one of our events and she rushed and jumped on stage. She took the mic and she's like, "People, where are the women here?" And we're like, what is her problem?
Yeah.
And then we really looked closely. I was like, wow, yeah, 80% of the presenter on stage were men, 90% probably Vera. And then, so since then, Vera has been kind of really holding that torch for us and helping us see the places, our blind spots, or the places that have been uncomfortable to look at. And recently, she's been supporting us as well to create the same, more diversity in the same community and to bring more diverse voices of wisdom. So thank you, Vera.
Thank you, Vera.
And I also wanted to share a little bit of your ancestry. And Vera is a Ukrainian Jew. And also she's a child of Holocaust survivor. And actually you carry an ancestry of 2 Holocausts, Armenian and the Jewish. So I think it's good to actually voice that and hold this, because we do carry all of this in our hearts, in our bodies. And so thank you, Vera. Thank you for being with us, and thank you for hosting some of the conversations for the gathering with us. And
thank you so much, Zaya. Thank you so much, Mao. I'm so touched by your love and support over the years, and I'm just so grateful to be a part of this gathering, a part of the Sand team, a part of the Sand family. It feels like such a privilege to feel and heal and be informed and transformed by this kind of unusual grace that you have, that you hold space for, and that holds this community together. You know, and it has been so beautiful for me to see the deep honoring of this tapestry, as you said, Zaya, of our lineages, of our traditions, of our ancestors, that this gathering has been weaving in these last 3 days. And that is why it is such an honor and a pleasure for me to introduce to you and to welcome to Sand our teacher this morning for this Wisdom in Times of Crisis gathering, Rabbi Dr. Tirzah Firestone. You know, there's truly no better living teacher to weave together the thread of wisdom and beauty of the Jewish tradition into the Sand field than I can imagine, than Tirzah. Reb Tirzah, welcome. You are one of the most brilliant and most integrated mystical Jewish voices of our generation. Reb Tirzah is a Jungian psychotherapist, an author, and a beloved spiritual leader in the international Jewish renewal movement, a community that is where I find my spiritual home as well. She's a widely known authority in her work on Jewish feminism and Jewish mysticism. Her work is unusual, not only in its in the way in which it weaves together the Kabbalistic wisdom and the most relevant modern insights in psychology, but also in the depth and breadth of her understanding of trauma and the healing processes that ancestral and intergenerational healing requires. Her work, of course, is particularly close to my heart because of my own legacy of trauma. And her latest book, which just came out and has already won a Nautilus Gold Award, which is called Wounds into Wisdom, the topic that she's bringing to us today as well. It's a gem drawing from neuroscience and depth psychology and ancient Jewish sources, and it offers a roadmap to healing for people of all backgrounds, and is truly for anyone interested in working with personal and collective healing at this time. You can learn more about her beautiful work at her website, www.tirzahfirestone.com. Reb Tirzah, welcome, and thank you so much for being with us this morning. We are ready.
Oh, it's a lot to live up to this morning. My God, that was cream of the cream. Thank you so much. It's a true honor to be here. I'm delighted to be here. It's an honor, and I'm so happy to join this family. And it really feels like a family. So thank you to Maurizio and Zaya, and to you, Vera. I'm so excited to be in discussion with you, with all of you. And I thought I would just begin with a very funny dream that I had not long ago. It was a few weeks ago. Dreams are a big part of my life. And I have not so many these days. Maybe it's because I'm getting older and I don't know. The unconscious is speaking to me less, but had this dream about being invited to this beautiful Italian dinner party. And it was all my favorite foods. It was a beautiful table with red wine and pasta and just my favorite sauces. And I was in heaven. I was truly in heaven, but I didn't know who had invited me. And I'm going around at the dinner party saying, who's hosting? Who is hosting this? And I'm told some unusual names, which I couldn't quite understand. And, but I'm just in heaven. And a few days later, I find myself on the screen with who else but Maurizio and Zaya. And I had the most delicious, warm-hearted, I just beheld them, passionate discussion with them. And I understood what they're about. They're about providing this incredible, delicious nourishment for so many souls. And after some hours after our conversation, the dream flashed in my head and I went, oh my God, that's it. That's what the dream was about. It was a premeditative dream. It was a prophetic dream that I was going to be invited into this gorgeous dinner party and be fed with so many people.
As soon as we can, we're going to feed you for real, I promise.
At the castle.
At the castle. We're going to make you an amazing meal. And with each and every one of you, by the way. It's not going to be a private dinner. We're going to do another event in Italy, and you all are going to be there, and it's going to be awesome. Okay.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Oh, so I speak to you this morning from the Rocky Mountains, where spring is really breaking forth. And wherever you find yourself this morning, let's take a moment just to give thanks. And in the Jewish tradition, we the first thing we do when we wake up is to thank the consciousness that's re-entering these amazing instruments, these bodies. So would you just join me and touch yourself somewhere on your body that just revels in this miracle? Just take a moment to feel your breath, feel the skin, the softness, the textures of your body, the hair, the terrain of your body. And now let's bless this larger body too, this body of community of souls that has come together this morning, just looking through our eyes at all of us and spreading out over the world in all the time zones of the world, and giving thanks, blessing each other through our eyes. And then the larger body that shelters us in place, this luminous living earth, which carries us right now, sustains us as we go through this crisis. And having in mind those who walked this earth and the places in which we lived before us, the ancestors of the places, the place, the capital P place, the sacred place that we, each of us, inhabit, and also the ancestors of our bloodlines. Let's call them in and just bless them, the beings upon whose shoulders we stand today. Thank you. So, what is this thing called ancestral healing? What is this new thing? And who is healing who? Are we healing the ancestors? Are the ancestors healing us? What is going on here? So to begin with, let me start with a story. It's a story from Wounds into Wisdom that Vera talked about. It comes from my research on people around the world who had lived through extreme trauma, who lived through historical trauma, unprecedented times, not unlike us. We're living through unprecedented times right now. And unnecessary death and disproportionate suffering. And in this research, I asked the question, is it possible to metabolize trauma? Is it possible to go through the eye of the needle, to live through extreme life situations, and to come out of it whole, to come out of it not crushed, but to create not more pain, but beauty, to create wisdom, to create moral leadership, to become moral leaders? Is it possible? And who are these people who are doing this? And that was my quest. Because now, as we know from neuroscience and epigenetics, trauma, these extreme life experiences that are unable to be metabolized in the moment, they continue to rumble through time, as has already been said today. I liken it to a train that continues to go through time, unloading its cargo, depositing its cargo, generation after generation, its unfinished stories and undigested material into the skin of future generations. And I'm being poetic here, or somewhat poetic here, but the science is finally teaching us what many of us have intuited for a long time, that environmental stresses are heritable. And so the question is, how do we stop the trauma train? And I am getting to the story, but I just want to contextualize it to say it's such an important question right now, as we face this moment in history when it's a moment when we cannot see the future. We cannot see the future. We cannot see what's on the horizon. We only feel the backlog of history pressing into us, snowballing into us, so alive. And for many of us around the world, there's a reactivation from that past onus, the past pushing, pressuring into us because there's so much fear, because there's so much uncertainty, and there's so much suffering all around us. Okay, story. So a few years ago, a woman named Esty came to me. And Esty was a beautiful woman in her 30s, shining dark eyes and shining black hair. And she herself had everything. Everything was right with her. But her little girl, she had a 7-year-old daughter named Shiraz. And this daughter was suffering from a terrible disorder. And this disorder was a separation anxiety. She literally could not be separated from her mother and father. She could not be alone. She could not go to school. She could not go to have play dates with her friends. And she was driving her parents basically crazy. And they had been to the school psychologist and to a family therapist, and nothing helped. So Esty came to me for support. And okay, I said, great, let's open the aperture on your life, and let's take a look at your story. What's your story? And we proceeded to create a genogram for her, which is a multidimensional family map, a multi-generational family map. And as we drew this map, Esty told me the most incredible story about how when her mother was pregnant with her, she and her father and her maternal grandparents escaped Tehran in the early 80s. It was at the beginning of the Iranian Revolution. And she was Jewish. Her parents were a Jewish family, and the minority religions and ethnic groups were under terrible persecution, and they got a tip-off from a neighbor that they were next in line. Their assets were going to be seized. They were going to be jailed. They needed to leave immediately. And they literally locked up this enormous mansion in the middle of the night and took a shopping bag full of their most precious toiletries and articles and left town on a donkey cart, riding along on opium bundles out of Tehran, across the Pakistani border, into Karachi, bribing guards and bribing people left and right till they found a plane out of Karachi to Zurich, and then from Zurich to Miami, etc. And it was a big success story. And I said, that's so fabulous. Look at this. What an incredible family legend you live. But what's strange is, what about this other side of your family? It's not here. She goes, I don't know anything about that side of the family. I don't know. I think they were all dead or something. So I said, go home and just ask. Find out what you can find out. And that night she called me and she was all in tears and she was upset. And she said, we need to come in to see you, my mother. And I heard screaming and crying in the background. It was a very vociferous Iranian family. The next day, she and her mother come in. And it turns out that Esty's asking had unearthed a very tragic family secret, a horrible, shameful, tragic secret, which was that the family left on their donkey cart across into the new world, into the free world, but they had left behind a 92-year-old blind grandmother, and they had just closed the door and never said goodbye. And they had left her without telling her anything because they were afraid that she would alert all the guards, and she would alert people. She was very loud and very cogent. And they never told her. They never said goodbye. They never separated correctly. And she died without knowing anything. She died of heartbreak not long after, several months after. And here never saw her first granddaughter. And the family was just bereft that the secret had come out. Esty's parents were very, very upset. And Esty was enraged that this had gone on. And there was all kinds of drama that ensued. And in the drama, they decided to make this memorial, and they grieved, and there were many, many pictures that came out and many tears. But the mystery of that story was that this was very, very healing, intergenerational healing, you might say. But it was all of a sudden on the other side of the household was a 7-year-old who was miraculously, within weeks, was coming back to normal. She was becoming a normal 7-year-old. It was as if this grandmother, thousands of miles away, that she had never met, had discharged her grief, had discharged her disease, had discharged her enormous heartache into this girl. And now she had been grieved and memorialized, and this little girl was free to be a 7-year-old again. And she demanded to go to school and demanded, like, get me out of this house where everybody's crying. We know from this kind of story and from so many others that the past does not just evaporate. It doesn't disappear. It leaves a legacy. We can take a person out of a trauma field, but it's much harder to take a trauma field out of a person. And that trauma field is what deactivates us. It depotentiates us. It makes us less of who we are. It keeps us spinning in eddies of reactivity, and keeps us emotionally numb, or it keeps us feeling ashamed of ourselves, or keep us feeling that we're not safe in this world. It keeps us feeling reactivated and repeating our injuries. So as we face this current moment in time, and we want to bring our full selves to bear into this portal of this new world, God willing, that's presenting itself, we have to bring our full selves, our fully available selves, our fully present, radically present selves. And so it's very helpful. It's very helpful to be able to know and to identify the residues of trauma in ourselves and also in our families, to know what we inherited, to know what is that backlog, that sort of, or we might say it's an undertow that keeps pulling us down or keeps pressuring us. It's good to know what are the hallmarks of trauma so that we can discharge them. And as I say these, just notice if any of these that you recognize from your family. So the first one, Bessel van der Kolk and all the great traumatologists in the world, the great scientists in the world say that it doesn't matter whether it's individual trauma or collective trauma. The primary trauma marker is dissociation. And dissociation is that emotional numbing that is a life-saving mechanism that helps us stay in the present. But if we don't reintegrate those trauma memories, those fragments that have been buried in ourselves, before long, they pull us back and they keep us numb, and they keep us from feeling full joy. They keep us from feeling fully alive. So dissociation is a major one, and it's not only, like I said, not only in individuals, but it's also in whole groups, whole ethnicities. And the next one I particularly relate to, because it's how I was raised in a family that was utterly in hyper arousal all the time, constantly, from 0 to 10 reactivity, right? Knee-jerk reactions. Everything was volatile, and everything was angry, and everything was erupting all the time. Excuse me, as I erupt my computer. Being ultra reactive. So this is a feeling that the shoe is about to drop at any moment, that our nervous systems are in this hypervigilance, and something bad is going to happen. We understand this. I also come from a Holocaust background. My mother made it out on the Kindertransport from Nazi Germany in 1939, very, very by the skin of her teeth, and she lost scores and scores of cousins and uncles and aunts, and she never talked about it. And my father was an American kid who was shipped overseas to the most devastated parts of Germany in the U.S. Army. In 1945, he found himself in the death camp of Bergen-Belsen as it was being liberated. And he saw things that were unseeable. And it was only after his death when we opened up his filing cabinet, and which was under lock and key, and took out a file of these unseeable things that he had seen as a 22-year-old, and he took pictures of them. And so I started to connect the dots and understand that my parents that was all the hyperactivity in our household. That was all this eruptivity and the volatility, and the dogmatic politics and the rigid parenting. All that these were trauma residues. So the second hallmark is this hyperarousal. And then there's also a third one, which is more subtle. It's a feeling of shame. It's a feeling that we are wrong. We did something very wrong, that we need to sort of stay separate, even if we have a good front, but we know inside that something is wrong with us. We feel that. We feel that we know that about ourselves, and perhaps even about our people. And then the last one I'll mention, the uncanny marker of trauma residue, is this unconscious, this inadvertent tendency that we can't really control. It's one that traumatologists don't quite understand completely, but it is a tendency to repeat or to reenact our injuries on ourselves or on others. Now, why on earth would we want to do that? Why would a veteran, a soldier who is, bombed out of his mind with PTSD, why would he re-enlist for another tour of duty? And why would an abused woman go back into harm's way, back to her abuser? And why do trafficked children sometimes choose to go back to their traffickers? So these are very mysterious things, but they live in our psyches, and they're universal, and they're cross-cultural. And so one thing that this moment brings to us is that the veils are being lifted. It's like there's a rawness. I don't know if you're all feeling this, that the rawness in the air. The veils are coming down, the veils are being parted, and life is so amplified. And so many of these things that we have in our back room, so to speak, are coming to the fore. And the invitation is also very strong. At the same time, we want to show up, and we want to show up well. But how do we show up in a truly generative way? How do we help build new systems? How do we help birth a new world, which we feel we're just at the cusp of? To be radically present without, let's just say we can't afford to show up to this moment from our emotional brains, from our old programmings, from our ancestral programs and old reactivities. We have to show up from our front new brain, from our prefrontal cortex, where we have a crisp understanding, where we have insight and we have empathy, and we can feel, and our executive planning is very sharp. We can think things through without having those knee-jerk reactions and those fears that stop us in our track or numb us out or keep us in shame, right? So, okay, I said a mouthful and maybe too much. I want to shift gears now and say that this work is not, as I said, it's not academic for me. It's also very, very personal, as it is for Vera. I'm excited to get to speak with Vera, but before we go on, I want to intersect with all of you and with your stories, because each one of you comes from a remarkable past. Each one of you had ancestors, and each one of your ancestors lived through something, a period of time, a place on this earth where unprecedented things were happening, just like now. And so it's a very good thing. And now I'm coming in from more of a spiritual place, from my ancestral wisdom that says that there are invisible dimensions, there are unseen dimensions beyond us that we might call the ancestral realm, that are very well, that are not traumatized, that are very well and wise, that are rooting for us, that are cheering us on. And we need to access those places. They want to be accessed. It's like, pardon the image that's coming, but it is like a woman who's nursing, and the baby, she needs the baby to suck. It's like this, these other dimensions want to be opened and drawn and nourish us. And so I'd love to share a brief practice right now, if you're willing. Are you willing? Can I get a thumbs up or a thumbs down? Or is it a time for a question or a time for, I see some furrowed brows. Let me.
Please, it's perfect.
Is it okay to share a practice here? Okay, so let's take a moment, just take a pause, and we'll press the enter button from the things that have been said and find our bodies again and get comfortable. and then get still. Let, as our teacher Thich Nhat Hanh says, let all the freshly pressed apple juice, let all the fibers sink down, and let all the pure liquid come to the top, clear and clarified. Good. So would you turn your attention inside and just follow your breath for a few rhythms in and out with ease. And just follow that breath which is connecting all of us around the planet this morning, this afternoon, this evening, wherever you are. Whatever the light is doing, we are connected by this webwork of breath and intention. And clearing out your mental screen for a moment and relaxing your hands and your shoulders in place. Let your hands get very heavy. And your shoulders to follow and your belly soft. And when you're ready, I'd like you to invite in to your mental screen the picture of somebody who is no longer on this earth, an ancestor, perhaps from your bloodline, perhaps just from another bloodline, a spiritual ally, a teacher, or a friend who's gone to the other side before you. I'd like you to invite somebody well and wise and be surprised. Allow yourself to be surprised who wants to show up this morning, who wants to show up on your mental screen. Someone who wants to be seen, who wants to connect, who has something good and healthful and whole for you. Take your time. Don't effort. Don't grab. Just notice who shows up and allow yourself to be surprised. Is this a grandmother or a grandfather? Is it a namesake? Perhaps it's a spiritual teacher or a young cousin who died early, or who is showing up? Just find one person and you'll know the right person because they will feel like, oh, yes. You'll feel an emotional charge. You'll feel warmth. You'll feel a blast of wellness coming your way. A blast of caring, a blast of love. And don't worry if you don't find anybody, that's just fine. But if you do, just remember, if you don't find anybody, just know that you could be also a historical figure or someone from the Bible or someone who you feel you emulate. You're in their soul family, you're connected to them. So feel that connection now. If you have somebody there in your mental field, feel them and notice them. Notice their light. Notice that they may not be in physical form, or you may see their physical form, but feel their emotional bodies. Feel their love, feel their wellness. What is their energy saying to you this morning, this afternoon, this evening? And don't be afraid to put before them where you are. Tell them, this is where I am on this 19th day of May. This is what my concerns are. This is what I'm carrying. Would you help me? And then just listen. Receive. Allow yourself to be surprised by the message that wants to come to you. And take it in. When we recognize our unseen family, our teachers, our loving ancestors, when we recognize them and give them honor, it's as if we turn the lights on in the unseen realms. We turn on a spigot. We turn on blessings. So I want you just to ask for a blessing right now before we come back to each other. Ask for a blessing. Ask for what you need. What's the blessing you need this morning? For health, for faith, for trust, for generativity. What is the blessing that you need this morning? And when you're ready, gently give a bow, an energetic bow to these beloved ancestors who've shown up to us, and give them thanks and honor, and ask, perhaps you'd like to ask if you can build that rapport, build that connection, invite them back to join us, to bless us in our mission, in our huge endeavors right now. And then rub your hands together, if you would. Wiggle your toes and rub your hands together and create heat. Create friction and place that heat somewhere on your body to re-embody yourself this morning. I do believe, I know, I really know, because I feel it in my body, that our ancestors are wanting so badly to bless us in our struggles. And they also need us to correct what they could not correct, to metabolize for them what they could not metabolize, to do. When I became a rabbi in the early 90s, it was as if, breaking through the patriarchy at another level. It was novel then. It was subterfuge then. It was like the unseen dimensions were cheering for me. The women were saying, yes, you are living the life we could not live. Yes, we are behind you. Yes, we have energy for you, and we're giving you an updraft of energy to do things that we could not do. So I know that this is happening. And so the healing goes both ways. They heal us, we heal them. And I have so much more to say, but I want to stop and join my new friend, Vera. And I just want to I'm so fortunate to be here this morning with you and open myself to your beauty and your questions and and to this wonderful group. So, Hineni, here I am.
Oh, Rab Tirzah, thank you so much. This was so beautiful and powerful and gentle. And I'm having a hard time getting back into that linear mind that can hold hold this space. Wow. I wonder if we can, without shifting out of this space, this container you created, if you can just share a little bit more as to why this ancestral healing is so significant in this time of crisis. How, and what does the Jewish lineage, what does the Jewish tradition have to say, our lineage that has dealt with so many times of crisis throughout its history, right? It's hard to imagine. For a long time, it's been very difficult for me to even think of my ancestors because there was no place to land. Because anywhere that I couldn't turn back, there would be the Shoah and the pogroms and the, exiles and so I'm so curious what our lineage that has dealt with so much crisis has brought forth in its ancestral wisdom of how to be with crisis.
Yeah.
Allow it to
yeah, I mean, I think this is the moment. I mean, we're living in this golden moment when we can reenact our trauma, we can recreate our trauma, we can, I mean, I want to weep when I say this, that we can reinvest in the victimhood and turn that victimhood into persecution of others. God forbid, but it's happening. It happens all the time. In the Greek classics, there was a word that was used called enantiodromia. It means that you have a blind spot, and because you have this blind spot, I think that they knew before neuroscience that there was this dissociative blind spot, that if we don't look into that blind spot, we will become what we have not been able to digest. We will become the persecutors. We will become the aggressors of the same crimes that we suffered from. It's a strange phenomenon in the psyche, but it happens. And so, part of what motivates me honestly, is human rights work in Israel and in Palestine, and seeing that in that part of the world there is a blind spot that I could not believe my eyes when I went there as a younger woman. It's like, what is this? What is this? And then I started studying trauma, and I started to understand these hallmarks that I've named, and that we have this tendency to recreate unless we have the guts, unless we have the courage to look into the blind spot and to see and to feel and to grieve. And I think that's why it's so critical right now that we have grief circles around the world, and that Joanna Macy's work, and that this is burgeoning around the world, that we feel our grief so that we don't become aggressors. And there's something strange and unlinear that I'm saying, but it is so true. So in both of us, you and I, Vera, we have these things. We, like you say, you can't even look at those ancestors. They suffered so much, and there's family separations and displacements and being treated like animals and cattle cars and extermination like vermin. All these horrible things. And yet we have to face these things and grieve them and feel them, so that we don't enact those things again, because they're bigger than us. This blind spot is bigger than we are. I don't know if I'm answering your question in a linear way, but that's what I was called to say.
Yeah. My attention is going back to when you mentioned your experience in having the women of our lineage come through and support you, and the way in which we live the unlived lives of our ancestors, the ways in which we're deployed. Our teacher Reb Zalman used to say, we're deployed here from beyond ourselves. They've deployed us.
That's right. We are. And I feel like, whether you came from a lineage such as ours, or you came from something that's more subtle, we are all being deployed right now. We are all being deployed by forces bigger than us. We feel that in our souls, and that's why I think Isaiah and Maurizio, you know, you're deployed. It's so clear to create this feast for us, to gather us together in this global circle, and to harness our energies. You know, there's a beautiful thing that I quote in Wounds into Wisdom. It's he's now an incredible leader of the Bereaved Family Forum in Israel and Palestine. His name is Rami El-Hanan, and his daughter was blown up in a suicide bombing years ago in Jerusalem. And he was, into his own admission, he became like an animal. He was rabid, he was enraged, he was untamable, and he just wanted vengeance. And that's really a very, we need to say that when terrible things happen, we get so triggered, and that's the way we're wired as animals. And it took him about a year of living like that, and then something happened, which I won't go into, but you know, he says, it's an amazing thing, you can see it in the book. He says, my pain was like a nuclear energy.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a choice. There was a subtle moment of choice. I had a choice. Was I going to allow this nuclear power within me to create more destruction, to create more darkness and damning in the world and dooming? Or was I going to turn that nuclear power of my pain, to harness my pain and create light and warmth and energy that could be used? And I think that metaphor of harnessing our pain is so profound, because and a lot of the subjects in my book say this, that you face into your loss, you grieve your loss, and then you harness the pain. You don't overcome your pain, you harness it. It's a power. And you look at what's going on now. We harness the pain of what is going on now, the injustices and the unnecessary deaths and the starvation, and we harness our tears, and we harness our heartbreak, and we allow it to fuel us to take action.
That's such a feminine way of framing that. And I wonder if you can speak a little bit about how our tradition holds the feminine. What is the feminine? Why don't we check out? Why don't we just bypass the trauma and the mess to greener pastures, to higher pastures? You know,
yeah.
Why does the feminine stay here and stay in exile with her children and stay among the broken?
Yeah.
You know, and
that's,
what is the healing power of that? Why is that healing?
You know, all through, it took me many years to come back to Judaism, and it took me many years to come back to Jewish mysticism, which I think all mysticisms are the same, right? You know, there's no Jewish mysticism and Christian mysticism and Sufi. It's all one mysticism, that there's just one here. And throughout our tradition of mysticism, one of the great images is that the divine feminine has been cut off and gone into exile with suffering humanity. And she has gone, she lives in humanity that's marginalized. She, the Shekhinah, we call her, the divine feminine presence, lives in the marginalized, the vulnerable, the children who are deported, and the displaced families and separated families. She lives with us. And that there is this longing, the texts say, in particular, the Zohar from the 1200s in Castilla, Spain, they said that God is longing to reenact the marriage, the divine marriage with the divine feminine, the masculine Godhead, so to speak, and the divine feminine Godhead have been broken, have been separated, and they're looking for each other, and they're longing for each other, and that we, humanity, are here to help that happen. So when we cry our tears, and when we follow our heartbreak, and when we do the work to help as we're all gathered here to do in this conference, we are doing this. We're uniting masculine and feminine. We're uniting the Shekhinah and the Kadosh Baruch Hu, the divine Holy One, and into oneness. And that the idea is that the unity to happen needs us. That God needs our partnership. That God needs our help. That God, there is a brokenness in the world. God is not perfect. God too is evolving. God too is broken, and we are here to help. We are here to repair the world, to repair the brokenness in the divine Godhead and as well as on this earth. So yeah, that's a mouthful, but let's see. I'm wanting to know if how this is settling, how this is landing with people, because Vera, you have this, but I'm wondering how this is for people. Our sand family.
Maybe we could open it up.
Quite a few questions percolating, so maybe tune into some. We have about 15 to 20 minutes for that. Would that be okay, Vera, if we take some questions? Yeah. KTG. Unmute.
There you are.
There you are.
There. Good morning from Vancouver. I just had a question for you because, as I was hearing you speak, I'm Indigenous from Canada, and my father was full blood from Northwest Territories, and my mother is half Indigenous and half German. And so, my question for you is just, my father, some context is my father went to residential school here in Canada, and it was very traumatizing for him. And sadly, he held that trauma and suffered with addiction and passed away from addiction 2 years ago. And on my mother's side, my grandmother died from cirrhosis at 40. And there's tons of trauma that has been passed down to me, and even as I speak, I feel sadness because it's not mine. But there's because I'm on this healing path, there's a responsibility that I have to heal this now, and I don't even want to really but I do want to, but it's so much. And I spoke with a friend over the weekend, and she said the healing it's on a molecular level inside of me now, this trauma. And also I just sense my central nervous system, the more work I do on myself, the more sensitive I'm recognizing I am. And I have 3 years of sobriety, but I was almost a statistic also. And so I just wanted to ask you, oftentimes I feel overwhelming sadness, and then also I feel alone on this healing path sometimes in the Indigenous community. My path involves my own Indigenous teachings, sweat and Sundance, and but also I have so much wonder for consciousness and for quantum physics and all these other modalities, somatic therapy and everything. And so I'm just asking you, maybe how can I handle this aloneness that I feel often as I look around at my people? And there are some people out there, but just curious, just maybe you could help me with the light, continue guiding me down this road.
Yes, Katie, thank you so much. I just want to say first, you are, your life and you are so important. You're turning around the destinies of so many people, yourself first, and everyone that touches you and comes from you. And so first and foremost, self-compassion, loving yourself, honoring yourself for what you are doing. You're really literally stopping. You're standing in a train tracks and putting out your hand and saying stop to that train. You're literally stopping the trauma train. And that is profound. This summer, I took part, I had the huge honor of taking part in a Sundance. There was a leader named Bruno Braveheart who did a Sundance in northern New Mexico. And he had the fourth day of the Sundance was designated for reconciliation and forgiveness. And I was just a witness, but my life changed from that because I saw there were people from all over the world, but there were people from Lakota Sioux who had lost many people in the march and the Wounded Knee massacre. And then there were also descendants of the cavalry who had committed the massacre at the same Sundance, and they were pierced. They were allowed to be pierced. It's a much bigger story, and I'd love to share it with you. But it was so transforming, and it was like, okay, this genocide that happened, this break, this intentional crashing of culture, of stealing of your culture, that is wanting to be healed in our generation, in our lifetimes, and far from being alone. There is a whole generation that's being deployed right now to do this, to stop those trains and to turn it around. And so I'm so honored to hear your story. I'm so honored to meet you. And don't despair. That's the main thing. Don't despair. You're not alone. But love yourself, honor yourself, and remember that all the great people, Jung and all the greats, said that when you can turn to face the complex, turn to face the unconscious, and name it, when you can name the beast, which as you have done, that's 80% of the healing. Just naming it, just because when we name it, we bring it to the, I understand he didn't say this, Jung didn't say this, but we bring it to the prefrontal cortex to label it, to see it, and we have the insight. We're not coming from that emotional brain or the survival place. We're coming from, oh, I see you, I honor you, I'm going to change you, I'm going to heal you. So big bow to you, Katie.
Thank you. Masicho in my language.
Toda in mine.
Thank you, Kitty. And there's so much love pouring in the chat for you and appreciation.
Have a look. Also, somebody says, I'm in a similar path. Please contact me. Please read the chat.
Yeah. Thank you. Emma Jarrett.
Emma Jarrett.
Hi.
Hi, Emma.
Hello. Oh,
Where
this
are
is
you
beautiful.
this morning?
I'm actually in Canada too. Having grown up in Wales, I just wanted to a couple of things, but following Katie's, I was very, very moved by that, and having lived in Canada, and having heard some of the talks earlier this week about how we're all complicit in the I'm just feeling like a very white European right now who wants to say sorry and represent that dimension. And the question that I had was to do with breast cancer, and having experienced it myself, and my mother and grandmother and great-grandmother. I have a 16-year-old daughter, and I have a strong belief that it's not just a genetic hardwired code, that there's ancestral wounding or an ancestral link. And I wondered your opinion on, as I'm doing the work, as I'm facing these elements and voicing them, am I the mama bear in me wants to save my daughter from getting breast cancer too. Is that possible?
Yes. Oh, well, there are genetics, and then there's epigenetics. Yes, and first of all, I want to say that your tears are, as the, you know, the white, I guess we could say perpetrator, or the ancestor, the descendant of perpetrators, or, you know, you're representing that lineage too, or those are healing. That's medicine to add to the brew. So thank you for that. Thank you. And I've worked with breast cancer in ritual constellations, and yes, I think that there is a very, very strong meta message that transfers down through our womanhood, through the generations. Now, you might have the BRCA gene too, and you may want to check that out for your daughter. And of course, but on an epigenetic level, what are the messages and the subtle the subtle, what do I want to say, the diminution of life, the deleterious message from woman to woman, from mother to daughter, that's a trauma train that we want to stop. And so in ritual and in the constellation work, which I haven't figured out how to do during this virus crisis when we're on lockdown, but I think, you know, when we open up again, and you can do constellation work and create a field where you can ritually and shamanically call upon way back all of the maternal lineage, and work with them and face them and honor them and thank them for their lives one by one, and ask them for their blessings, ask them for their power to help heal this legacy, this trauma legacy, this disease legacy, and find out more about the meta message that's being transferred, that you can stop. Because as you cry and as you do your own healing, that will shift. And there's now research that shows that as we do our work, it literally shifts at a molecular level, the people who come out of us, even those who are already born. So like Esty with her daughter, right?
Right.
Doing her work of unearthing those secrets and unearthing the shame. In the other part of the house, in the other part of the family, the daughter just unlinearly is healed. So I bless you with that.
Thank you. That is such a blessing.
Doing your work. Yeah. Thank you, Emma.
Beautiful. Thanks for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you
for
so
sharing yourself and your tears and your. Thank you.
So rich. Thomas, you want to be the next person? Thomas Kerr? Are you there, Thomas? Yes,
unmuted,
Thomas.
yeah.
Yes.
You sound so rhythmic as you speak, like it's flowing out of you. It's beautiful. Basically, it's about the blind spots. When people come through them and they get to the other side and they actually can look back and say, oh my God, look what I've been doing to myself. I'm an example of that only recently. And I look at the damage I've done to my family and friends. I've worn them all out with my trauma story. And I'm in great shape. But I look back at that, I go, my goodness, I've done so much damage in this lifetime because I could not see my way out. So there must be many people that are like that you get to hear from, because those stories are important. If I'd heard someone tell me somehow personally or whatever, I would have been amazed. I spent a week with Bessel van der Kolk, so he was a storyteller, but it was so helpful. So that's my question to you is, we get to hear that side of the story is important.
It's so important. Well, first, God bless you for doing the work, this enormous work in this world, in this lifetime, and not taking it not taking it to the next world. So that's huge. That's
the
huge.
amount of effort has been immense, and quite literally, I just want to put this in here. I was at Stand in 2018 in San Jose, and I drove away and had a stroke. And I've spent 18 months in isolation before the virus, and that's when my healing happened.
Wow.
And look at me, I'm completely fine.
Wow.
Physically and emotionally. So anyways, back to blind spots.
You're better than fine.
Yes, I am.
You know, you remember what Ramdas said of blessed memory. Ramdas, after his stroke, said, God stroked me.
Yes.
God stroked me. And I mean, obviously that was the 18 months. 18 in Jewish mysticism is life. It's a mystical number. And so you got life back. Mm-hmm. And I would say similarly, as I've said before to the others, to Katie and to Emma, I mean, it starts with self-compassion. Thomas, I mean, love yourself, what you've done, honor yourself, what you've done, and in your self-forgiveness, there will be forgiveness for you. And there will be tikkun, there will be a repair. If you can honor yourself and say, just as you are, I've caused you so much damage, please forgive me. And ask for forgiveness, but also honor yourself, not to come, you know, from a place of self-denigration or anything like that, but or shame. It's from a point of, God stroked me, I've done my work, I'm passing that legacy on to you, and please, please don't let that trauma residue that I've given you, don't let that stop you. So telling the people in your life, you know, let's use that as fuel, and please don't do what I've done. Don't let it stop you. Don't let the residue become an obstacle for you. And your humility is awesome. And your, you know, what a model for you. I hope you write and speak and teach. Because
it's a really interesting thing, because it's hard to know where to go with this. But again, hearing other stories of people that have passed through is a kind of the phrase I use, is important.
Yeah.
We need to know that other people have made it.
That's right. That's exactly right. And that's what compelled me to write this book, is people who have been through incredible tragedy and incredible upheaval and lives that were just full of turbulence and shock, and how they didn't bite the bait. They didn't stop. They didn't allow the normative trauma markers to get them. They kept moving like you. They kept going through the eye of the needle. So God love you.
When I had my stroke, I left Sand and I was on my way to do a fast in the desert. And instead, I didn't even make it. My desert turned out to be the hospital.
Wow.
Right. And I can't take credit for any of it. It just seems like it happened to me.
Yeah.
Just like the trauma at work, a trauma that happened to me a long time ago, but the healing has happened to me as well.
It's grace.
Yeah.
Grace. There's so much that we can't see, and so much from the invisible dimensions that we can't see it. But you're the product of it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. You're what you're saying is very, very important.
And you. Thank you, Thomas.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you.
I'll make it to Sand again.
You're back already.
You are already.
Already here. Welcome home, brother. Welcome back home.
Thank you.
Tirzah, we have so many questions pouring in, and we're coming close to the end of our time. I just wanted to say we have actually a day dedicated to trauma, and we will have with us Donald. I know you have a powerful question and a sharing. We have Gabor Mate with us, so we can address those more, go deeper into some of the trauma we all share. Rabbi Tirzah, would you like to just share some final words or anything
Wrap it up.
Feels alive?
Oh, Vera, I'm looking at you. I want to wax rabbinic here. Just give everybody such a big, bountiful blessing for doing this work. And again, the mama and papa who made this feast. May we draw from the invisible realms everything we need to go through this portal that the crisis has opened, and may we truly birth a new world, truly, and leave our cynicism and our fear and our resignation and our dissociation. I'll leave that all behind and go into a world of love. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much, Reb Tirzah. Thank you.
Vera. Thank you, Zaya. Thank you, Maurizio.
Thank you, Vera.
Everybody here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Tirzah.
And please remember that we have on Mighty Network, we also have a way to stay in touch and communicate with each other. We created this parallel community, so when this face-to-face,
the live part is over, we can continue.
We can continue. There will be a way to continue to communicate. You received it in your invitation. Yeah. So please join us there.
And also we have resources of therapies that we recommend if anyone would like to go deeper and work with some of the therapies in the same community. We have those resources and we can share with you.
Ask us. Please feel free. You have my email address. All of you, please use it. At the worst, I will stop answering you. But has not happened yet. Please.
And to learn more about Reb Tirzah's work, go to her website, explore, read her book, explore her amazing work, and it's www.tirzah with a Z Firestone.com. Thank you so much, Reb Tirzah.
Thank you.
Thank you.